Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. This week we are excited to be chatting with Lianne and Corey from the Small Worlds podcast and from Forever Break, their new show as well.
Yeah, and if these names sound familiar, it's probably because we were actually guests on the Small Worlds podcast back in the fall of 2019. We talked to Corey and Leanne for their show while we were actually in Guadalajara, Mexico. And then we actually put the audio out on our feed. So it was really fun to flip the script here, interview Corey and Leanne. And on this episode, we really dove into their travel story, traveling together, how they met, what they've been up to over the last couple of months, where they were when the pandemic hit, what it was like going home, what it's been like since they've been home, what's next for them, and so much more. So this is a really, really fun conversation. But before we get into that, we just wanted to talk a little bit about the World Wanderers Insider.
Yeah, the World Wanderers Insider is a show where we are diving into the nitty-gritty of creating your career online. So being nomads, we meet so many great people who are working and traveling, and they might not be traveling at the current moment, but have found so many different, interesting ways to create a career that allows them to have location flexibility. And we wanted to dive in and talk to them and share those episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we really want to do with this podcast series is teach you the different ways that you can work online, essentially. So even though right now we can't really travel, there's lots of opportunities to be working online. So we talk to people who are doing things like YouTube, travel blogging, various freelancing opportunities, freelance writing, teaching English, as well as we share a lot about what we have done to make money over the last couple of years. So when you think digital nomad, you might think a certain type of role or responsibility or way that you make money, but there's actually tons of different ways to do that. And that's what we're teaching you through the show. So if you are interested in making your money online, being able to work from anywhere in the world, head on over to patreon.com/The World Wanderers and join us there.
All right, now on to the interview with Corey and Leanne.
Corey, Leanne, welcome to the podcast today. We're super excited to have you here with us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Good to be back with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last time we chatted was you had us on your show, the Small Worlds podcast, and we talked back in September of 2019. And I definitely want to hear everything that's happened in your world from September through till now. But maybe let's save that for a little bit. Let's back up a little bit so that people can get to know you guys a bit. Can you tell us your travel story and what first inspired you guys to travel?
Mine dates back a ways to 2002. I'd done a little bit of traveling, but just your typical little spring break in Mexico and stuff like that. Nothing big. But then I tried college, wasn't ready for college, caught wind of a guy that was older than me in high school who had gone over to Thailand for a month or so and had just an amazing time, and met up with him at just some random gathering in my old hometown and heard his stories. So a friend of mine looked at each other and we just said, let's book tickets. So we did that, and I've saved up for that summer, and then went over and did Southeast Asia for about 3.5 months. And as you guys can imagine, I was just absolutely hooked. All I could think about was, how am I going to travel again?
Yes, and you did.
Yeah.
And mine's a little bit more recent. I finished college in 2014, and Peter Pan style decided I wasn't ready to grow up. And fast forward 6 years later, here we are, still not ready to grow up. So there we go.
Leanne's been a big proponent of the working holiday visas.
Oh, nice. I feel like it's like you got to take advantage of that when you can, because I think at, 31 or 33, you can't get them anymore?
Yeah, which I think is a bit cruel, really. I mean, some people, like in Corey's case, he traveled, then grew up for a little while, and then was like, okay, well, I don't want to do this. And then now, when I guess it was like 36, when he discovered that he on these working holiday visas, and it was too late. So, but yeah, it's 31 and 35 in some countries as well.
Yeah, what a cool way to be able to go experience these places. And like for her, it's just been like full integration into Australia and then Canadian, the economy, the society, just everything. Yeah. I think that's a really cool way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely like a way to get to know a country that's very different from backpacking and just being there for a couple days. And we actually haven't done a working holiday visa either. And as Canadians, we have lots of opportunities for that. And there's still a couple countries that I think we could probably do it in. We are just in our early 30s, so we should take advantage of that. But
Yeah, I think Australia.
yeah, we found like living in countries kind of gives us the same thing since we work online. But yeah, one of the things I'm curious about is where your travel journeys meet. Like, where did you guys meet, and where have you guys been traveling together over the last couple of years?
Well, we actually met in your home country of Canada. Beautiful, beautiful British Columbia. I was in the middle of doing my Canadian visa, or towards the end of it actually, in Whistler. And Corey just strolled in, and he was on holiday or vacation at the time. And he just came into my bar, and yeah, I'd been working 18 days straight, and none of my friends had a day off. And so him and his friends were like, come get drunk with us. So
We'd had an amazing morning of riding powder at Whistler, and we're really vibing and feeling good. So I think that the energy surrounding the group of guys that I was with was fun. And Leanne didn't have any other tables, so she just sat there and chatted with us, and we just kind of kept in touch. And over the next few months, just didn't really put any expectations on it, I don't think. And then I was kind of looking for an escape. That travel bug that I think we all have was just kind of getting louder and louder in my ear. And I finally just said, what do you think about maybe trying to save some money and going to India in like a few months? And she said, I was thinking of going down to Central or South America, but India's on my list too. So let's do it. So we took the risk, and it's been pretty awesome ever since.
it's been all right.
Yeah, let's wait and see. So you guys went to India without, like, you obviously knew each other, but you hadn't like spent a lot of time together before.
So we did like we met in the January, and we did about 4 months of long distance. And, we were just like keeping in contact. And then Corey was just like, okay, well, I can move up to Canada for a bit, just on a tourist visa, and like just hang out for a few months until my visa was finished. So we just did that. We kind of like jumped the gun and just went straight from one end of the spectrum to the other, like, not seeing each other or barely knowing each other to moving in with each other.
How well the long distance thing went definitely played into that, because it was really smooth, and we both just realized that we communicated really well and didn't like, it wasn't like I think I've done long distance before, and it seems to like get into, and I'm guilty of it too, like just kind of nagging stuff of just like, well, I texted you, why'd you take an hour to answer? And just kind of just little BS stuff like that doesn't really matter in the long run. But we didn't have any of that. So I think we both saw that and said, okay, like, this seems like it might have a shot it's a big risk. I think most of my friends were like, what the hell are you doing?
I mean, most of my friends are still like, well, are you still with an American guy? I just like to give people shit from America.
But yeah, we had a couple months up there, and then we set out on our trip, and just kind of it's been unique to spend this much time with somebody day in and day out. And that's kind of one of the things with traveling is I don't know if there's anybody else that I know that I would have been able to pull it off with. And that's people that I've known for years and years, because I don't know, it just kind of happens like that. So it's been a great 7 months, and we're when we had to cut our trip short, we came back and have been spending the time with my family, which has been really nice to help them through this whole pandemic.
Yeah, we always talked about how for us, I feel like traveling is something that really brought us together, because you go like just so far into the deep end. Like, it's so easy. Well, not easy, of course, but like when you're living your lives at home in kind of parallel, your lives actually don't, merge together too much. Like, you share the same space maybe, but you go to work with different people. Maybe you spend a bit of time together in the evening. And then some more time together on the weekend, but like, how much time are you really spending together versus like you jump into this travel experience where you're 24/7 together. You have to learn how to, meet your own needs for independence within that context. And then you're also thrown into all these crazy situations, which I imagine being in India would be like the peak of that, in terms of like, you're going to find things that are going to stress you out, and then you're going to have to deal with that in combination with a different person.
It's very true. I mean, in any relationship I've been beforehand, how many times a few months into a relationship have you had to discuss your puking from both ends on a on a moving train in the middle of the night, you know? So it definitely brings you together in different ways, and you just have to kind of like just laugh about it, you know?
I'm curious too, like with you guys and doing it as much as you have, one of the things that we discovered was that obviously we need our alone time. We're both pretty extroverted overall, but we do have our introverted side. So if one of us just like woke up and we're like, I don't want to go sightseeing, I don't want to like, months on end of travel, life gets a little bit normal. And you've got to try and do that. So I'm curious if you guys have, I imagine that you don't beat each other up about that. Like, hey, I'm just going to like have a day where I'm just going to like binge on Netflix. And if you want to go walk around, that's fine. But I just kind of need my alone time. Have you guys had that at all?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, for us, we started traveling together when we were quite a bit younger. I mean, we were 22 and 21 on our first trip. And so that was something. Ryan's a natural introvert and I'm a natural extrovert. So that was something that was, I guess, kind of like hard for me when we first traveled together. And at that point, we had been dating for a little while at that point, but we had been like living in houses with roommates, and we'd never spent that much time together in that type of context. And we'd also never traveled that long before. So yeah, we definitely went through that learning. And I feel like now it's very like smooth. Like we just know each other so well. And I think both of us are pretty good at being like, I need you to not talk right now, or I'm going to go in this space and I just need like time by myself. And it's like, yep, cool. It's not about the other person. It's just, what we need in that moment. And I think that stuff is so important. I mean, regardless if you're traveling with your family or a friend or a romantic partner, I feel like you have to be able to have those types of conversations, because otherwise you'll just go crazy.
Well, that's it, right? Even in like everyday life, I find those kind of skills, or should I say desensitivity, that is really helped in the travel respect. I think that helps so much in every day as well. Like even in work and stuff, if you're just saying, hey, just explain how you're feeling, and it's very impersonal, I think it just makes the world such a better place. Maybe
this quarantine life for the last couple of months have given people a taste of it too, that they might not have if they've never gone and done a long trip with their partner or something like that.
Yeah, I would imagine. People, I feel like you go through phases, right, of like spending so much time together where you're like, maybe let's get a cat, let's have a baby, like let's never talk to each other again.
Literally.
And that's like before lunch.
Yeah, that was first day one.
Yeah, something that I found and that I guess made me feel like a bit uncomfortable kind of early on as we were doing this was like sometimes we would just sit down for dinner and we'd have like virtually nothing to say, or we'd go for a walk and it'd just be totally silent. And I was like, oh, it's like so weird that we've like run out of things to talk about. Like maybe that's a sign that this like isn't going to work out well. And now I really look at that as like, how amazing is it that we can just like go for a walk and not talk to each other?
Just enjoy 100%. Each other's company without having to speak.
Amanda, I think that is absolutely perfect way to describe it, because so many times at dinner, we'd just be staring across the table, but it was like, we just spent the entire day together, like on our motorbike, going and seeing things. What else could we really talk about? And like not beating yourself up about that. I think you can get really overly sensitive. So I think that that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, for sure. And so when did you guys head over to India?
So when we left Canada in the August, and then we hopped up to Alaska, and then so September we went to Indonesia, and then we did a month in Indonesia, and then a month in Nepal, and then we did a month in India. So it was in November or December.
First part of November, really, and then we left India for after about 6 weeks, and then we went to Sri Lanka for a month, and then came back up and met another friend of ours. The same guy that we were in Alaska with came and met us in India, and we did the northern part of India. When we first got there, we got to Delhi, and the pollution level was so high that anybody who had the means was leaving the city. So we spent one night and then got on the next train down to Mumbai.
Okay, gotcha. And so when did you guys first hear about coronavirus? Because I'm wondering if you would have heard about it more in like early 2020, being that you guys were in like sort of Central Asia.
Yep. So I'm someone who's generally my whole adult life had their pulse on the news, probably to a fault of doing it a bit too much.
He's a grown-up. Yeah. He's a grown-up.
No, I adult pretty well, but almost to a negative. But I had this probably on my radar mid-January. When we were going back from Sri Lanka into Delhi, just kind of not really taken any precautions, but I had heard of it. I knew that it was around, and was just getting more and more aware. And then obviously those last 2 weeks of January, especially in Asia, were pretty chaotic.
Honestly, so we were in Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam from the beginning of February or end of January to the beginning of March, so to the 9th of March. And honestly, everyone was wearing masks. When we were in Thailand, we got our temperatures taken when we were going on the islands.
First weekend of February, we're going from Phuket to Koh Lanta on a ferry, and we stopped for like an hour or two at the Phi Phi Islands, and everyone getting off the ferry got a forehead temperature check. So we were, that probably put an alarm in us much like a month or maybe even 6 weeks before, I think, most people in Western countries.
Because America, we know that how strict the borders are coming in anyway. So I was like on an ESTA visa coming here for some weddings. And we were just like, okay, well, this is a lot more serious than people are thinking. But we have to say that we're so impressed with how Asia handled it, in particular like Vietnam. Everyone had hand sanitizer, whatever shop we were going in, people were like, oh, make sure you hand sanitize, be safe, wear a mask. And it didn't impact our experience. It actually probably made our experience a little bit better, actually, unfortunately. I don't want to say that, but all of the tourist sites were so quiet. And, because all of the Chinese tourists weren't allowed in on the northern side of Vietnam because the Chinese borders were closed. So, in a way, it was like really good for us. We got to see these really amazing sites that would usually be really, really busy with domestic tourists, and they were just empty. And then, and people were just very safe when they were over there. And then we flew back into the States we landed on the 10th of March. No one asked us a question. I didn't even get asked if I was in China, where I had been. Literally, the customs agent hit on me, and that was it. And I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah, it was really, we were on the flight being like, okay, we're probably looking at a multiple hours in the custom line. I'm thinking like they're going to be taking 1 in every 4 people coming off the flight and giving them random temperature checks and stuff. But it was honestly the fastest I've ever moved through customs. Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah, we flew on the 16th of March, right? Or the 18th.
The 18th.
And it was interesting because I think a day or two before, Canada had passed some new rules about quarantine. And so they were going to be denying anyone with symptoms of coronavirus access to Canada, which meant like...
even Canadian citizens.
Yeah, so like anyone entirely.
Okay.
And so we got all like freaked out because we're like, okay, well, we're flying from Panama where we're like all set up. We've got a well-stocked apartment to Houston, and then Houston would be the place we would get denied entry onto our next flight, and then we'd be stuck in like this city that's so far away from where we live, where we have nothing set up. And so we were like stressed about it and went through US customs like a breeze, and then we're kind of waiting around the airport waiting to see, because neither of us were sick, but we were both kind of wondering like, when you don't have you're not, we were like, I don't know what a normal temperature is. I don't know if I'm going to develop a fever. Like, what if I just get a tickle in my throat at the wrong time? Not really knowing what it was going to be like. Yeah. And so then it happens, and it's like the most ticking a box check. It's like, hey, are you guys sick right now? No fever? No. Okay, cool. Like, get on board. And we're like, well, that's nice for us, but I feel like it makes me think that we're just like so screwed when it comes to any of these procedures actually working.
Oh, completely. Like if you look at the state, like I'll use America as an example just because we've been here. When you look at the state of the way the cases are rising and stuff, and then we look back to how little security and how little people seem to care coming in. And we had friends who were entering at the end of March, having the same experience as us. We're like, no wonder it's a mess right now. No wonder.
Yeah, it's it's wild.
Scary.
Yeah, something I'm kind of curious about, just since you guys, hold different passports and stuff, is like what that experience was like for you as a couple. Because, and one of the reasons I'm curious is because I have a friend who, she's Australian and she's engaged to an American, but she's like, she was actually in the process of moving over to start her green card application, and they were supposed to be getting married, just a small ceremony in the spring, which obviously they couldn't do. But she had actually been out of the country. So she had been out of Australia. So she'd been over in Bali when all of this was hitting. And then she went back to Australia, but she was worried because Australia like put in the 14-day quarantine, but she was able to just like cross through the airport and do it as transit and get over to the US. But that was right around the middle of March, like right as, flights were getting canceled. She got I think on one of the last flights that was flying from Melbourne to LA at the time and was able to get over. But I just feel like as I was talking to her, I was like, man, it must be so stressful to deal with this. And then I actually have another friend who's Canadian, but her partner's Brazilian, and she was down in Brazil at the time, and her family was like, you need to come home. That'll be the better move. But now like the Canadian border's closed. Brazilians aren't allowed in the US right now. She can't get into Brazil. So it's like they actually can't meet up right now. And I'm just curious for you guys being from different places, kind of, was there like stress around that? Like if it was going to all go okay and if you'd be able to kind of stay physically together during this time?
I mean, that was the biggest scare or the biggest stress was, okay, well, if we do have to split up, we don't know if it's going to be 1 month or 6 months or 8 months. We have no idea. And I think if it was only for a month, we'd be like, okay, well, maybe we'd enjoy the time apart, and then we'll have a break and then we'll meet up again. But that was kind of the scare. And then on top of that, we have the dog as well. So we had made some plans to go over to the UK for the summer, then go over to Mexico for the fall, and then go back to the UK for Christmas, which is going to be like the first Christmas my family has spent together in 5 years. So, so it was like kind of a big deal. And then, I never go home. And we were just like, okay, well, we're in the States now, but England's closed. The UK government were urging everyone to come home, but that's not really my home. So I was like, oh, should I stay here? Should we both go to the UK? And then they'd stopped accepting visitors. Then the American border was closed. But luckily I got a 1 month extension. So it's called a satisfactory departure. So when our flight got cancelled, you just have to call up the customs agents and say, hey, my flight got cancelled, I can't get another one. And luckily they approved it. But there was definitely a lot of stress going into that phone call, because if I hadn't have got my satisfactory departure, we wouldn't have known if Corey and the dog could get into the UK for another month, 2 months, 3 months. We just wouldn't have known at that time. So it was a bit stressful, but we're very fortunate and we're very grateful for our situation, and we're all good to go now.
I think it really depended on which customs agent that we ended up talking to that day too, because Leanne had called the day before and didn't have a good experience, and that created 24 hours of stress. And I just was going back and forth on if I should call on her behalf, just because I think that I can talk to U.S. Customs a little bit more calmly.
They scare me.
And and fortunately, the guy that I talked to was great. It was like 3 days before our initial flight was supposed to leave, and I just said, hey, that flight's canceled. We're scrambling to find something, but I saw that there's a 30-day satisfactory departure to extend our visa. This would be fantastic to help us out. And he was like, oh, that's perfect. That sounds exactly what you guys need. So we're good to go until I think the first week of July, and then we've got tickets.
Luckily, the UK border is open to visitors in the last 3 weeks. So they said, as long as you have a private residence to quarantine at, which we do because we can stay with some of my family, then him and the dog are allowed in. So.
Oh, nice. So you guys will be able to go over there like for the summer and kind of do at least part of your plans.
So we decided, because we found out as well that we have to take, the dog can usually ride in cabin, but we don't. But in the UK, they only let dogs fly in the cargo. So we want to try and alleviate the stress for her as well. So we're just going to go spend 6 months over there and try and wait this out, I guess, a little bit, and go spend time with my family. And then in January, carry on with our plans if we can.
Bonus is that I've never been to the UK, so I get just a whole new experience in 6 months of getting an inside
6
track.
months of rain.
6 months of rain. I love that.
July and August will be pretty nice, won't they?
I mean,
I like to think so.
He's really positive about it. But you know what? The whole climate change thing is like working in England's favour. The rest of the world is getting destroyed, but England's becoming a tropical island these days. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing part of the world. And you know what? I actually really don't like rain, but I find something very endearing about like London a little bit rainy. Like I feel like it's how you see it in like movies and TV and stuff like that.
Yeah, so. It's the novelty. When you're not from there, it's the novelty, isn't it? Which I totally get.
And Leanne's brother's like, her last experience there is like 6 years ago. I think that she's just in these 6 months, there's a good chance that she's going to come away from it being a little bit more pro UK than she is now.
Yeah, I know for sure. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you guys are going to get to go over there. And I think it's great that you're planning, 6 months over there. That's going to be a fun adventure for sure. We are super excited to announce a brand new partnership that we have, and that is with BetterHelp.
Both of us over the past couple of years have gotten a lot of value out of working with professional counselors. But sometimes, whether you're at home and it's hard to find someone that's affordable and that you can really connect with, or especially when you're on the road, it can be hard to find that right person. And that's why we both really like BetterHelp.
BetterHelp is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as with traditional therapy. They are committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. Plus, it's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Head on over to betterhelp.com/worldwanders. That's BetterHelp, HELP, and join the 500,000 people, us included, taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. There's a special offer for the World Wanderers listeners. You get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/worldwanders.
And so, when we did chat before, it was on your guys' show, Small Worlds podcast. And so what kind of inspired you guys to start podcasting, and what was that process like of launching a podcast?
Yeah, that's on me. I've been pretty advocate of podcasting for just listening in general for, 8 to 9 years now. And I couldn't just leave. I'd been working the big grown-up job for 6 or 7 years, and I just know me. And anytime I've gone and done a long multiple-month traveling, I usually cut it shorter than I originally planned to go because I end up just getting bored, and I need something to occupy my brain. So I try and figure out a project. So
he needs a purpose.
I do. I told Leanne, I was just like, I'm going to need some sort of project. And I've never designed a website. I've never obviously done a podcast, but it just came to me one night when we decided to go to India. I was laying there and I couldn't sleep. And I was just like, I wonder if there's a podcast that's a travel blog type thing, but it's a podcast about somebody who's backpacked through India for 3 months. And I really searched hard. And at that time, I just didn't search the right spots, but I didn't find anything. So that's what stemmed the idea. And then it just grew from there. And it really worked out well. And I always told Leanne, I was like, at the very worst thing is that we have this really cool thing to look back at that documented this trip. Let's not put any pressure on it. Let's just do it, put it out there. And if people listen, fantastic. But let's more do it for us than anybody else. So that was the original idea. And then it's just kind of grown from there. We both seem to really like it. And I think the thing that we like the most about it is that we seem to learn so much. As I think it made us travel differently. We're taking notes. We're looking for different things that might be interesting to talk about. And I think we get a little bit deeper experience than we did in the past.
Yeah, we definitely invest more time, and I've always thought we kept our eyes open anyway. But when we started to actually actively make notes and think about different kinds of people, what they would enjoy, and I think that was just something that was like, oh, there's actually so much more than we thought here. And yeah, it was just very eye-opening, wasn't it?
And as you guys know, because you guys were in on it early, it is much more of a workload than I think people think. I think people think you just set up a microphone, hit record, talk for a while, and then upload it, and there it is for people. But there's a lot more to it than that. You got to be a little bit more organized and put a lot of forethought into it.
Yeah, definitely. It's not an easy task. And I think anyone who creates content kind of knows that you've got to put work into it. I mean, even at the minimum, there needs to be some effort with it. But I love the fact that you guys started it as, just kind of a passion project and something that you thought might be interesting and just really set out to have conversations you were interested in. And that's very much how we started the World Wanderers too. And I feel like, if people ask us for advice on podcasting, which, they don't always do, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they're curious.
We always say, I think we asked you.
Okay. Maybe you guys asked us.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to come across like, oh, everyone's just asking us for podcasting information, because they're not. But when people do ask, like, we are usually like, do something that you feel excited about, because that's going to translate to your listeners. Like, when the passion kind of comes through, that's when people get excited about it. And we've found, like, we've been through so many ups and downs with our show and done so many different things. Like, the moments where we've tried to do things in a way that we thought is what people might like is the moments when, people don't seem to like that stuff. They seem to like when we just do our thing on the show. And we've always very much had the same approach. Like, if nobody ever listened and we never made a single dollar off of it, we're still going to have these great conversations between ourselves and also, really cool people like yourselves. And like, we've met so many people through the show, which I'm sure you can relate to, that we may have never otherwise met. So yeah, I love that you guys started it for that reason.
Yeah, and even because our first show, Small Worlds, where we interviewed you, that was the passion project, and then even from that, we ended up starting our new show with the Forever Break podcast, which again we were interviewing someone. We had a guest, and then he was starting out this new website and this new travel company, and then we just kind of pitched to him, hey, like, are you interested in having a podcast? And then, from this passion project, we've now developed it into a job and hopefully a career. So yeah, it's been a really, really cool journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so with the Forever Break podcast, what's that show kind of going to focus on and be about?
So that's going to be a little bit, I would say that the best way that I could describe it is that Small Worlds is analog and Forever Break is going to be our like dive into digital. It's just, we're upping the production quality. We're investing in better microphones and just trying to take a little bit more care with our, how we record and the sound and everything like that. Outreach to different guests, and then not just focus on travel. That was one of the things. So we had a whole season 1 set up, ready to go on Southeast Asia, Bali, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. Had all the outlines written, guests lined up to interview. Pandemic hits, and all of a sudden we've got a audible and just be like, and I'm wondering if you guys have had this kind of thought between yourselves of, should we be waving these travel destinations out in front of people that they can't necessarily go to right now? Is that the right way to do this at this point in time? And we decided not to. So we went to the guy that we're partnered with, whose name is Josh, and just kind of told him the concerns about that. And he completely agreed and was like, well, I always look at travel for Forever Break as being kind of the gateway drug. Let's do this another way. And let's talk about like mindfulness, because that's another side of this that we want to talk to people about. We just want to get them to focus on overall just self-improvement and well-being. So we did an entire season on mindfulness, and I think we benefited a little bit from quarantine because we were able to get some guests on the show that we might not have otherwise. But it was 6 weeks of just absolute chaos of recording, interviewing, outlining, doing everything in post-production, and just we learned so much. And that was a big thing that we wanted to do, is come from the position of, we're not experts on this. We're not going to preach to people. We kind of want to be active audience members that are asking questions as we learn along the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the idea of talking about, different topics that certainly relate to travel, and travel is a lifestyle, but not necessarily destinations. And for sure, we can relate to that. I mean, I think that we've only put out maybe like 3 destination episodes over the last, I guess, how long have we been doing this thing now? Like since March. 2 of them were Costa Rica, and we just, simply said like, you can't go right now, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of a break from quarantine, and hopefully you can plan your trip in the future. And then we just put out our Colombia episode for Carnival a couple weeks ago, and we figured, Carnival only happens once a year anyway. So if people were looking, they'd be looking ahead to February. And I mean, that's really smart. we have no idea if there's going to be a Carnival 2021. If I know anything about Latin America, it's that they'll make that happen. But
I tend to agree with that.
But we don't really know. So yeah, it's definitely been interesting to kind of watch that. And it does feel weird to be like, hey, go to this place, do this thing, when it's like, well, no, we should actually all be in our houses right now, or we should actually all be at home. Borders are closed. Now is not the time to take adventure travel. But also knowing that at some point we will be able to travel again.
Exactly. And it's like giving people who are fortunate enough to have that hope. Obviously, not everyone's in the same position, but it's also saying, hey, like there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be okay, and look ahead. So I do like that's the other end of the sword, isn't it? It's like, okay, well, you don't want to dangle it, but it's also giving people something to look forward to.
Especially when all the news that you're hearing nonstop on anything is all the same thing for months. Like it just is. It just got exhausting. So I think that the big thing was like, well, what would we want to do right now? And it's like, well, we have the opportunity, a unique time to be able to spend a lot of time on ourselves and learning and growing and doing that type of thing. So maybe other people will gravitate towards that too. So let's try and put out some episodes that could do something like that.
Yeah, it's awesome. And definitely have to check it out. I was just looking at the list of episodes as you guys were talking on Spotify on the show. So definitely really excited to check it out.
Oh, thank you.
Look at the epigenetics one. That one blew our mind.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that topic just in general. So I'm going to download that after we get off the call here.
Yeah. See, that was something I'd never really, well, to be honest, the whole theme of this scene, this season, I'm not like the least mindful person ever. Without meaning to be, whatsoever. I actually told a friend of mine that the new podcast was on mindfulness, and she literally laughed and was like, "You, no offense, but you." And I was like, "Well, actually, yeah, but this is the whole point. It's not just for a certain type of person. It's definitely been an educational experience, and even people who may be listening and who are like, oh, well, that's not really my thing. I urge you to listen because it wasn't my thing either, and I've really enjoyed it." So.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know, like, if you have any major takeaways from going through that season and doing all that learning as, like, a self-proclaimed unmindful person.
Honestly, there's been time. So we've done a few interviews since we released it, and I've just sat back afterwards and I've been like, oh my God, I don't even sound like I sound so developed.
I think if you go through the 14 episodes of the season, like one thing that'll happen is you'll just the idea of mindfulness and just taking a moment to just pause and just think about things a little bit deeper and think about your decision making and step back away from whatever it is that's chaotic in your life right now. Mm-hmm. I think that those just kind of become a practice throughout it. And I know that it's something that I've thought of for quite at least 4 or 5 years. But Leanne, like she said, hasn't, but she's just, the word mindfulness comes up a little bit more. She'll just be like, oh, what are we going to have for dinner? And she'll just like pause and think about it. And like, she'll just say it. Like, I'm just being a little bit more mindful about what I'm eating or how I'm exercising these
even
types.
how you're speaking to people. And, it's been more sensitive to people. I don't know. It's been really eye-opening. There's been a lot.
Yeah. I feel like it's like such an important kind of like mental tool to have in your toolbox, to have this concept of like, it's something you can actively try to focus on being present versus I think most of us like grow up with the idea of like, oh, I feel really scattered right now, or I feel really like anxious right now. But when we're feeling kind of happy, we're still kind of oftentimes not really present with whatever's going on. So it's like really valuable to think about, hey, like I should try to be present. I should try to be mindful.
Yeah, especially in like today's world where, so many people, especially during quarantine, are, finding themselves suffering with mental illness or anxiety and maybe depression, stress. And even my brother, he listened to an episode and he suffers from some anxiety. And he called me and was just like mind blown. It was the epigenetics episode and he was just mind blown. And he just said, wow, it's like a weight lifted off my shoulders to hear someone speak about this. And we've got the experts in all of these episodes that are really educating us all. And it was just, I think it's just so helpful in people's mental state, and super helpful tool.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm really excited to listen. And I'm curious, what's kind of next for you guys in terms of your podcasts, your career, the work that you're doing, all of that good stuff?
So we keep going back and forth on the small world stuff. I think we're going to take a little bit of a break from it through June as we're kind of arranging what our first month or so is going to look like in the UK, because we have to go there in quarantine for 2 weeks at her brother's house. And we were reading that they do spot checks. Like the government will actually come around and make sure that we're there. And so, we've got to be tight on that. So we've just gonna give ourselves a little bit of a break. Right now, we're kind of in the promotional phase of this first season with Forever Break. And then I don't think we're necessarily going to dive into a destinational season yet. I think we're going to do another season on something, whether it's lifestyle related, whether it's some episodes on minimalism or educating people on, how the climate change is affecting things around the world, and just different things that we're interested in that we want to be educated on, that hopefully other people are as well. And but yeah, we're hoping to do 4 seasons by the end of the year. And I think probably by season 3 or 4, we're going to circle back to that original one on Southeast Asia and then go from there. If we get over to the UK and Europe this summer and things open up, we'll probably start trying to do a couple of seasons and episodes on some different places over there.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. I'm excited to follow along, and it's been really great getting to catch up with you guys. I'm so glad that you guys are safe and well and all that good stuff, and also excited about these new projects that you're working on. If people want to learn more about you guys, listen to your shows, where can they go to find all of that?
Yep. So on the internet, you just go to the website foreverbreak.com/podcast. And we're also available if you just search Forever Break on Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, all those places. And I will say that right now we are still doing a promotional giveaway for a DJI drone. So if you go to that website, you can check it out. That's sometime like the middle of July. So anybody that wants to go there, sign up. You can get yourself a free drone. Yeah.
All right, we'll have to go sign up.
Yeah.
Put as many in as you can. Need to make all the burner emails,
No, but we really appreciate you guys having us on, and great to catch up with you as well. What a unique time. I'm happy you guys are safe and sound, and hopefully just planning on having a great summer up in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. We're counting on it. But yeah, it's crazy to think that we talked to you guys right as you were about to head out to Indonesia, and we were had just left Canada to be in Mexico. So it's pretty wild that we're both back at home after all these travels and pandemic, quarantine, all this stuff.
I know, right? It just makes you wonder.
Now that I'm thinking back to it, we are in the same house that we originally talked to you guys in.
Oh yeah, that's so true.
That's so funny. Weird small
all
world.
the places. I know, it's crazy.
Yeah. But who knows where we'll be next time we have a catch up, huh?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys.
To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at World Wanderers 1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.